Exciting, exciting, exciting! Hello everyone, my name is Aijing and today I am so excited to try out the Katie Jane Hughes and Spectrum brushes collaboration. I haven't even opened it yet, so let's open it together. It came in this nice big cardboard box and inside is the actual brushes, the brush holders and everything. So this is the Spectrum logo, I think. It does smell kind of like leathery, so it doesn't smell great, but this feels like pretty good quality. Then we also, with the sets, there is this brush roll. Wow, very nicely wrapped up. And then all of these brushes. Okay, I'm just going to unwrap this. Okay, so these are all of the 25 brushes that comes in this kit. I'll be trying on as many of these as possible today and give you a review of whether they were worth the money. Okay, let's talk about these brushes. I want to give you some detailed comparisons as well with each different brush. There are 25 brushes and it came with a brush cloth which feels very soft as a microfiber material, and the whole thing cost £159.99. Let's quickly talk about the first brush. So Katie named all of the brushes by numbers rather than calling it foundation, blush, bronzer brush, because she wanted the brushes to be multi-purpose rather than just telling the user that this brush can only be used for foundation or whatever. So number one, this is what it looks like. It's got all of the brushes have got this very nice khaki coloured handle, this gold bit here, I don't know what that is called, and all of the brush fibers are vegan, cruelty free and synthetic, but they feel very, very soft and they're all this creamy colour. So this is number one. I tried to find something similar in my collection, but to be honest, I couldn't. So if you compare this brush to the Real Techniques blush brush, you can see it's a lot smaller, it's a lot denser and it's more tapered. And this here, I've got a Real Techniques brush as well. It is the custom cheek brush, similar size, but this is definitely more densely packed, and the Spectrum one definitely feels softer as well, not quite the same. And then lastly, I've got this kind of random brush from a brush kit that I got from a friend, and this is by the brand Naya. I think you can find it on Amazon, and it's a contour highlight brush. So similar size, but this is a lot fluffier, and again this is a lot more dense. I think this will be good for concentrated powder. Maybe you could even use this as foundation to kind of buff into the skin. So that's number one. Number two, obviously number two comes after number one, and number two is a lot smaller compared to number one. It's a little bit more tapered, it's a little bit fluffier. I feel like the closest brush I have in my collection to number two is this Morphe M438 brush. I use this for setting underneath my eyes or some parts of my face, and I think this could be used in a similar way. Next, we've got the number three brush. So number two and three are similar size, but number three's got dual fiber. So if you could see that the top is a lot less, so the number of bristles is a lot less at the top and it's a lot more dense at the bottom, and it's a little bit of a tapered shape. Number four is also a dual fiber brush, but it's got this slant, you can see here. I have quite a few dual fiber brushes, but I don't have anything that's quite like this taper. I've got two flat ones. This is MAC 188S, and this is the stippling brush by Real Techniques. So you can see not really the same. And then I've got this one, which is kind of a dual fiber as well, but you can see the dual fiber top bit is a lot shorter, and this is the lighter layer complexion brush by Real Techniques as well. There are a lot more bristles in this brush. It's not quite as fluffy as this one. And then I've got this one, which is another MAC brush, is 161S, which is the sort of the tapered dual fiber brush, but again you can see the slant is quite different. So I don't have anything like these in my collection. So number 5 is just your good old slanted kind of contour, bronzer, blush brush, whatever, however you want to use it. I don't have anything quite this size, but I feel like I've got quite a few in my collection that's like this, and one of them is the Sephora Professional brush. Obviously this is, I've had this for years, and this is a natural bristles brush, and I do love using this for blush. So we'll see how this one performs. Next we've got number 8. So number 8 is like a paddle brush. It looks like a foundation brush, but when you compare it to a proper paddle foundation brush, you can see it's a lot smaller and a lot thinner. Again, this is a Sephora foundation brush. So in Katie's video, she uses this for powder actually, especially under her eyes and around the smile lines. Another brush that I have in my collection that is kind of for similar use but really looks completely different is the my Kitco Pro Perfect powder brush, and you can see it's really not that similar. So this one is a lot fatter and this one's a lot thinner. We've got number 7. Number 7, a lot smaller now. We're kind of getting more into the details, and I feel like this brush is very similar to an existing Spectrum brush, which is Spectrum A07. So you can see pretty similar size, pretty similar width, and they're kind of built the same way, a very dense brush. They both feel quite soft. I feel like maybe the Katie Jane Hughes one feels just a little bit softer, okay? And this one I feel like would be pretty good for smudging, or maybe blending out concealer if you kind of heat it like that. Although I have to be honest, I don't use this brush an awful lot, so we'll see if I actually get any use out of this one. Next one is probably my favourite brush from the collection, and that is number 8. And I say it's my favourite because I feel like I do use this type of brush quite often. So this number 8, so there are actually 2 number 8s that she included, because I think this is probably one of her favourite type of brushes to use as well for the face. You can use this for highlighter, you can even use it for very concentrated blush or bronzer. You can sort of just sweep this over the eye. You work for powder, you can do this with foundation. I think because of how multi-purpose it is, she included 2 so that you don't have to wash the brush between different usage. So that's really handy. I do really like this shape, and I think the most similar one I have in my collection is the Real Techniques setting brush. So I have multiples of the setting brush, and you can see it is kind of that similar taper finish, but the Spectrum one is definitely, it's got less bristles, you can see. I think the Real Techniques one is just a little bit fatter, and I have seen Katie Jane Hughes use this Real Techniques setting brush quite a lot for foundation. She uses the Glossier Stretch Concealer with this brush a lot. Oof. Next one, we've got number 9. So this is number 9, and I thought I didn't have anything like this in my collection, but I actually found this, my Kitco 1.21, my flat definer brush, which is quite similar, but you can see Katie Jane Hughes has shorter bristles, it's wider. And another similar brush that I have is a Sephora flat liner brush, but again it's not quite the same. You can see these bristles are obviously a lot longer, and again it is thinner. So I put all these 3 here, and this one, so this is actually quite unique, and I feel like this one will be really good for cleaning underneath that winged eyeliner, and I think you can use this as eyeliner as well, but I feel like that little sharp wing clear up would be great with this brush because it is so short, so you have a lot of control with this. So number 10 is a nice fluffy tapered blending brush. So I've got this Morphe M433 brush. For comparison, the Morphe one's a lot smaller and a little less dense, so this will be pretty good for all over eyeshadow or blending out concealer. Quite good. I don't have anything this shaped, this size in my collection. Okay, and next is number 11. So number 11 compared to number 10. So this is number 10, this is number 11. Obviously 11 is smaller and it's a little bit fluffier as well. And similarly, again, it's just one of these classic eyeshadow blending brushes. Feels very soft, and what I have similar in my collection are two Real Techniques brushes. So this is the this is the base shadow brush. It's so old I was struggling to read it, and this one is the Essential Crease brush. So I think the Essential Crease brush is probably closest to the Katie Jane Hughes brush, but you can see that the handle is a little bit different in size. Okay, number 12, we're halfway through-ish. So this is quite similar to her number 7 actually. It's basically a smaller version of it. And what I have in my collection that's most similar is the e.l.f. Shadow C brush. But the e.l.f. Shadow C brush is larger. Again, this is great for smudging, and I think, you know, smudging that line, the lower lash line, and I think I'll use this a lot more than number 7 because it's smaller and I quite like my eyeshadow to be very precise. Number 13, so just as a comparison, this was number 12, this is number 13. You can see they're kind of packed in the same way, but this is a round finish rather than that flat finish. And again, similar things in my collection. I feel like this Outer V brush from Makeup Geek is quite similar. They've both got that dome shape. This bristle is slightly longer and the brush handle itself is slightly longer. And the other brush that I have here is a shading brush by Real Techniques, but you can see this one is a little bit wider, so it's got more of that flat shape, whereas this is really proper round shape, but it's very similar to the Makeup Geek Outer V shadow. Both of them feel very soft. Number 14 looks like this. So this reminds me of a Smith brush I don't own, but I've seen Samantha Ravindell use quite a lot. So this is very thin flat brush, so this would be great for those shimmer shadows that it's better pick up with a finger. If you use this wet, picking up those shimmer shades, putting it on the center of the eyelid, I think that would be pretty easy. Alternatively, you can even use this as a liner brush. If you use it like this, I can imagine that would be quite nice as well. And what I have similar in my collection is a Colourpop E3 brush. You can see, but the Colourpop brush is a lot fatter. Number 15, it's one of those flat, fluffy brushes. So it's similar in number 14 that, you know, it's flat this way, but obviously this one is fluffier and this is just straight, flat, kind of paddle shape. Again, this will be great for just doing that very fine detail blending. In terms of similar ones for number 15 from my collection, so you know those brushes that come with the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes, so this is one of them. I feel like this end of the brush is sort of similar, but you know, this is not as fanned out and it's not as flat, but I think that's probably the closest I've got in my collection. Then we've got number 18. So number 18 is another paddle brush that is very similar to number 14, but you can see this is flat, whereas this is round. It is also obviously very similar to number 8, but number 16 is longer and thinner. So number 17. Number 17 is very small. It's again tapered blending brush, but nothing in my collection is this small. This is a blending brush by Smashbox. It's the shallow blending brush. So I think this is the exact shape as this one, but this is obviously so much smaller. So again, it's great for those little details. So number 18, again, another small brush. And I have comparison for here, Morphe M431 brush. So this is another smudger brush, and this one goes less into a point, but they are similar shape, size and usage. Number 19 is a very thin, fluffy blending brush again. So this is number 19, this is number 17. So number 19 is actually bigger and it's a lot less densely packed. Comparison again with my Smashbox brush. So again, very similar, but this is flatter, whereas you can see this Smashbox is more domed, and obviously this is bigger and more densely packed. Number 20. Oh my gosh, I'm tired of talking. Okay, number 20 is another kind of flat paddle brush. And if I get out number 14 for comparison, so number 14 has got that tapered point, whereas number 20 is round. And what I have in my collection that is very similar is the My Tiny Shade and Shadow from My Kit Co. So similar, but definitely not the same. Longer bristles with the Katie Jane Hughes collection. The handle itself is actually smaller with the Katie Jane Hughes collection. Again, I imagine this one I will mainly be using wet for shimmer shadows. Number 21 is a teeny tiny point brush. Again, I think good for detail work, good for smudging outliner. And this Zoewa and this Zoewa and this Zoewa 320 smoky liner is quite similar. So this one's got longer bristles and is a little bit more densely packed, but the usage of these two I imagine will be quite similar. I can't imagine using this for much else. Then we've got number 22, which is one of the liner brushes. So this is what it looks like. I think most people probably have this type of brush in their collection. So I've got two Real Techniques ones actually. So this one, Katie Jane Hughes one at the moment, looks a lot more tapered. Looks like it comes into a finer point, but honestly I think that's just because it's quite new. So the bristles are still nice and pointy. But I think once you start using it, washing it, it'll probably go a little bit funny, like this Real Techniques one. Then we've got 23 is a brow brush. So this bit obviously you can use for liner as well, or you can use a pomade or some kind of brow gel situation and just draw on brow hairs with this type of motion. I remember before those eyebrow brush flick pens came out, Katie Jane Hughes actually did this tutorial where she used the Della De Palma, gosh I can't even remember the name, but it was this pot of brow gel, and she used one of those My Kit Co brushes, My Kit Co 1.17. She drew on her eyebrows, and that's when I completely fell in love with her work. And I went out and bought those brushes from My Kit Co and that exact brow product, and I did my brows that way. But now with those brush flick pens, it's just easier than using a brush, dipping it in and then drawing on the brow hairs. But still, that's kind of OG Katie Jane Hughes Instagram content. Anyway, so this is what the brush looks like. Obviously spoolie at one end, and I feel like quite a lot of us probably has a brush like this. Again, this is one from Naya, the Amazon kind of company. I got this as a gift, and you can see this one is a lot smaller, a lot finer, but the spoolie, I mean, I don't know, how many variations of spoolie can you make? This is my Kitco brush. I actually have 2 of these because I love it so much. It's called the My Tiny Angle brush. So the Katie Jane Hughes is actually a little bit bigger. Finally, the last brush, number 24. Now remember, there are 25 brushes, but number 8 is duplicated, so that's why the last one's got number 24. It's a much longer eyeliner brush. This is number 22. You can see number 24 is much larger. In Katie's video, she said number 22 is more for controlled liner application, whereas number 24 is more for artistic liner, where you know, do all those fancy shapes if you wanted to, even draw lines on your face if you wanted to. Okay, deep breath. So that's all of the brushes. I need to get a drink before I start using them because I am getting very thirsty. This is the microfiber cloth, again in this nice khaki color with the other brushes, and it's got that gold detail again mirrored in the brushes, so it feels very soft. I'll be using this today as well to see how well it gets out color between uses. Okay, let's move on to the demonstration. So I'm starting off with the number 8 brush, and I'm really buffing my foundation in with this brush. Obviously it's a very small brush, so the process took quite a while, but it gave me a really nice airbrushed finish. My skin looked absolutely flawless. The foundation that I'm using is the Shiseido Self-Refreshing Synchro foundation in natural finish, so not the new radiant one, but the older natural matte finish one. And then I use number 11 brush, and I dipped the brush in the Becca Under Eye Brightening Concealer pot. I usually apply this product with my finger, but for the sake of trying as many brushes out as possible, I use a number 11 brush instead. It worked really well with this cream product, to my surprise, and as you can see, this Becca Under Eye Brightening Concealer is magic. My whole under area looked so much brighter. As I've mentioned before, this whole kit has 25 brushes. It costs £159.99, so £160, and it came in with the nice brush holder and the microfiber brush towel, which honestly feels like great quality. In terms of comparing this set with other brands out there, I feel that it is actually fairly priced considering the quality brush holder case and the microfiber towel that come with it. I think there are plenty of other brands out there for a similar kind of set. You would have to pay maybe around £200, and for those type of brushes it only comes with a brush roll rather than an actual case. So in terms of actually getting the brushes, the experience was actually very easy for me. I signed up to the mailing list that Katie Jane Hughes provided on her Instagram swipe up link, which meant I got an hour earlier access to these brushes compared to rest of the public. So on the day, I think it was at 6 o'clock, that I got the email, and it had a code and the link to the brushes. Luckily, I actually got the email maybe about 4 minutes before 6, so I got on the website super quick, didn't even think, added it to my cart and checked out, and it was super easy. I didn't have to queue. It was just not stressful at all, but I know that wasn't the same for everybody. And now I am putting the Maybelline Fit Me concealer on my under eyes and then using the number 10 brush to blend it out. The number 10 brush is basically a bigger version of the number 11 brush, and again, it was a very easy blend with the brush. I was very happy. There were no brush marks whatsoever with all 3 of the brushes I used for my base. So let's go back to talking about the shopping experience. Like I said, mine was absolutely stress-free, but I know that wasn't the case for everyone. From the Instagram comments, I think quite a few people were waiting in line on the website for 20 minutes watching the wheel go around and ended up with no product. The only thing I could say is I think she's releasing the whole kit again in May and also some smaller sets. So if you missed out on this time round, maybe you will be able to pick it up next time. Now I'm using number 7 brush, and what I've just put on my eyelid is the Urban Decay Eye Primer. I've got mine in the shade Clear. I think it's the anti-aging one. So the number 7 brush, as you can see, is basically kind of like a paddle brush, and again that just spread the primer very easily. And obviously this is something I usually use with my finger, to be honest. Now I am using the number 6 brush with the Laura Mercier translucent powder, because Kitty Jane Hughes uses this brush for powder a lot, so I want to use it exactly like she does. This deposit powder without any issues is quite different from the usual brush that I would use for setting my face, but I did actually like it. It didn't deposit too much powder, which was what I was worried about. And you can see powder obviously makes a big difference in the under eye area. So going back to the shopping experience overall, delivery itself was free, which you would expect when you spend £160 on the company. And I placed the order on the 26th of February, but the packages weren't sent out until the 22nd of March. I think I got my package on the 23rd or the 24th of March. The delivery was a 48-hour track delivery by Royal Mail. I live in South Wales in the UK, and I actually live in the same town where Spectrum office is based. Now I am using the number 17 brush. It's quite a small brush, and I dipped into that pink eyeshadow from the Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity palette. I was struggling with using this little brush to get the shade all over my eyelid, and it deposited quite a lot of pigment and wasn't blending out the way that I wanted things to blend out. So I gave up trying to use that brush, and I cleaned the number 11 brush that I used with the Becca Under Eye Brightening Concealer. The microfiber towel cleaned the brush out pretty well. Then I dipped back into the pink eyeshadow with the number 11 brush, and it definitely worked a lot better. The number 11 brush was able to give me that washed, diffused look that I wanted from this eyeshadow. Then I used the number 20 brush. So you can see this is the thin kind of paddle brush that will be really good for shimmer shades. That shade I went in with was a dual chrome shade from that eyeshadow palette. I would usually use my finger for this type of shade because it just picks up better, but I wanted to give that brush a go. As you can see, it was depositing a bit of pigment, but I wasn't entirely happy with it. And this clip just shows you that's the brush swatch and that's the finger swatch, and you can see the finger swatch is a lot smoother with more pigment. So then I tried to wet the brush and went on with the other side. So again, it was picking up pigment and depositing some of it, but honestly I think it's just the shade, not really the brush. It was just one of those type shades that would have worked better with a finger than a brush. So at the far left, that's dry brush swatch, then finger swatch, and then it was a wet brush swatch. You can see the wet brush swatch was very good, but when you look at my eyes, you couldn't really see the difference between the dry brush or the wet brush application. Then I went in with number 18 brush into the dark brown shade from the palette. It was a dark brown matte, and I just applied the eyeshadow very close to the lash line and the outer corner. I was going for a slightly smoky effect, and obviously the number 18 brush worked very well for that. I had absolutely no complaints. So Spectrum is vegan and cruelty-free. They started off with just selling brushes, I believe, but now they've got some eyeshadow palettes and lip products as well, I think. I would love to know if you've tried any of their other brushes or any other products. Leave me a comment down below, and whether your delivery came as quickly as mine if you didn't live in the UK. So next we've got the number 15 brush, and I went in with that red glittery shade. I didn't wet my brush this time, but that brush picked up this particular shade really well. I think again it's just to do with the eyeshadow quality. I think this type of shade would work well with a brush or a finger, unlike the first shimmer shade that I used. Now I am taking the number 19 brush. It is a small fluffy brush, and I just use that brush to blend the two shimmer shades together to give a more polished look, and you can see this worked pretty well. And now we're taking the number 13 brush, and I dipped in this pinky red sort of metallic shade from the palette, and I wanted to put that shade over the outer corner, and I was just pointing out to you that the shade I'm using for the outer corner was not the same shade as the center lid shade. And again, I think it is the eyeshadow. It was a very soft creamy powder, so it actually picked up quite well with the brush, and I was able to manipulate it and shape it into a little bit of a wing without any issues. And then I'm just cleaning up my eyeshadow a little bit because I think I got a little bit overzealous with my application. And then I went back with the number 19 brush to just blend everything out again. I did clean the number 19 brush with the cloth between the two blends, and it just cleaned up again very well with a microfiber cloth. So now I'm using the number 21, which is kind of a pencil brush, and I went in with that orange metallic shade. I applied this very close to my lower lash line and the waterline, and I'm glad to say that this brush was not scratchy at all. It was super soft and applied that shadow like a dream. And I just want to say that eyeshadow on the lower lash line looked absolutely stunning. Then I wanted to highlight my inner corners, and I used number 16. I picked up a gold shade, another completely different shade from the eyeshadow palette, and I honestly thought this shade wouldn't pick up well, but it was again a very creamy shade, so this brush applied it without any problems. I didn't even have to wet the brush. And I went back with another paddle brush. This time it was a number 14 brush, and I'm wetting it with the NYX spray, and I dipped it into that dark purple shade. And what I wanted to do was actually use this brush as a liner, like how I explained in the previous portion of the video. You can use it like a paddle brush and, you know, apply a shimmer shade in the center lid, but I honestly think you can use this type of brush as a liner as well. As you can see here, it is applying that dark purple shade very well, and with that eyeshadow wet, I think it worked pretty well as a liner. So normally I would do my eyes first, considering how much shimmer shades I use and how complex this look was, but I did do my base first because I wasn't sure which eye look I was gonna do, so I tried to clean the fallout with number 3 brush, but obviously it didn't work, so I went in with the face halo to clean everything up, and then cleaned everything again with my number 8 brush that I used the foundation with. Now I'm using number 22 brush and dipping it in that purple shade to line my eyes again, and I'm just putting the purple really mainly in the inner portion of my eye. So number 22 is that classic eyeliner brush for doing winged liner, and you can see it worked really well. You can see the purple there. I was very happy with how the look was turning out. As there was another liner brush in this collection, number 24, it was slightly longer, it had longer bristles for more artistic work. So I wet the brush and basically made this green liquid liner type situation on my hand, and used number 24 to do a floating eyeliner situation. I honestly was worried that I wouldn't be able to use this brush considering how long the bristles were, but it actually was very easy to use, surprisingly, and I was able to do that little floating eyeliner with really good control, and I didn't struggle at all, which was really nice. Then I used the L'Oreal Brow Artist Plumper over my brows, and I think I deposited too much product, so I used the number 23 brush that had a spoolie on the other end to just lighten everything. Then I used the number 9 brush to clean up underneath my wing. I dipped the brush in the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer, and you can see that is looking very sharp underneath that eye. It did take me some time to blend it out, but the result was good. Then I used number 2 brush as a finishing powder brush. I'm just dipping that in the Hourglass dim light powders that came in that limited edition palette. This was pretty good, I guess. I mean, I feel like this brush wasn't that fluffy for me. I usually prefer a slightly fluffier brush to set my face. After using the number 2 brush, I felt like maybe this brush would be better for more concentrated powder. Then I used the number 1 brush for bronzer, and again it is an Hourglass bronzer. The shade is Radiant Bronze Light, and this is usually a pretty pigmented bronzer, and I felt like with the number 1 brush it actually got me to control the pigment a lot better. And because the number 1 brush has a bit of a taper, so I feel like you can really put that in the hollows of your cheekbones and then blend, so the brush will be pretty good for contouring as well. Because it had that nice tapered point, you just used it to put a bit of bronzer on my nose as well, and again it worked really well. I was very pleased with this brush. The next brush I used was the number 3 brush, so that's one of the duo fiber brushes, and I used it with the Glossier Cloud Paint in the shade Dusk. If you know this product, you'll know that it is quite pigmented and you have to be a little bit careful with how much you put on the cheek. So I was really working the product into the brush before I even touched it to my face, and surprisingly, because of that, I actually needed to squeeze out more of the liquid blush because it wasn't giving me as much pigment as I was expecting. So overall, the number 3 brush will be really good for someone who's a little bit too heavy-handed with a blush. And I picked up the number 5 brush and dipped it into that blush part of the Hourglass palette. The number 5 brush is that classic slanted contour blush brush. I think it picked up quite a lot of pigment, and I have to say I do prefer my natural bristled hair compared to this brush for blush. Because there was quite a lot of pigment on my cheeks, I went back with the number 2 brush, dipped it in the Laura Mercier translucent setting powder, and just buffed that powder over my cheek area to tone down the color a little bit. It didn't actually work that well, so I went back with my foundation brush over the cheek area to dampen down the color. Then I went in with the number 4 brush, which is another dual fiber brush, but it had that slant to it, and I dipped it into the Mary Lou Luminizer highlighter, and I found that this applied highlighter in a little bit more sheer way and gave me a very nice glow. And I'm sure you know that this highlighter is very blingy, very metallic, and I felt that this brush nicely diffused it a little bit. Then for lipstick, I'm using the Lisa Eldridge Velvet Matte Lipstick in the shade Velvet Fawn, and I'm using the number 12 brush, and I try to give my lips this diffused look. The brush didn't actually deposit very much pigmentation to my lips, so then I applied directly from the bullet, and I think you can see from the video there that my top lip had a lot more pigment compared to my bottom lip. So then I just blurred out the top lip with a brush rather than trying to apply pigment from the brush to my lips. Then I used the number 23 brush. This is the double-ended one with a spoolie on the other side. I dipped the brush in the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer again to just clean around my lips because I was very liberal when I blended out the lipstick. Normally you would use this brush for drawing on brow hairs or as eyeliner, but I just wanted to showcase it being used in a different way. So how do I feel about these brushes? £160 is definitely a lot of money to spend on just makeup brushes. If you are lucky enough to have that sort of money to spend on these sort of things, and you like makeup and you like Katie Hughes, then obviously yes, these brushes are great. They are very, very soft. They have performed very well on my eyes and my face today. I have absolutely no complaints. Also, there are brushes in here that I feel like I do not have in my collection. However, if you are a beginner in makeup, I feel like this brush set may not be the best for you. This brush set does not contain all those classic shapes. So for example, it doesn't have a classic foundation brush, like, you know, this dense bristle packed foundation brush for blending out liquid foundation that does it in like 5 seconds. It doesn't have those classic kind of fluffy powder brushes that the average person would use for bronzer and blush. And the other thing that I've noticed comparing the brush set with brushes in my own collection is the eyeshadow brushes as well. Like, this kit has small brushes that will be good for smudging out lower lash line, but it doesn't have big blending brushes, because quite a lot of people would like to have this kind of brush, this size. Katie Hughes brush set, those blending brushes are much smaller. They're better for more detailed work, better for people, I think, that are a little bit more advanced with makeup. That is just my personal opinion. Obviously you may disagree, but that is my impression. So which ones would I recommend? So I don't know how she's going to arrange the sets. I imagine it probably will be like a face set, eye set sort of thing. If you like doing really detailed eye makeup work, then when they come out in smaller sets, I think it is definitely worth getting one of those eye sets. In terms of the face set, to be honest, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about these face brushes, just because they're so different to what I'm used to. You know, it's not the big fluffy powder brush that I am used to. They work absolutely fine, but it's just different. I do like the dual fiber brushes because I like a softer kind of finish, so I recommend those. And definitely number 8 is my favourite. I thought it would be my favourite, and it is my favourite. This applied foundation beautifully. It took a long time, but it worked really well. Also number 9, this short brush for cleaning up under the wing is great. These are the ones that really stood out for me. In the end, if you really like Katie Hughes and you really like makeup and you have the money, then definitely go ahead and get it. It comes in this beautiful storage case, and I just noticed that even kind of inside here it's got this nice felt material, so that's some really nice details, and the microfiber brush towel as well works really great. So overall, I would recommend this. The only caveat is if you think this is the only brush set you'll ever need. I don't think that's the case because it does miss a lot of the staples that I talked about earlier. Thank you so much for watching. This is the end of the video. It's taking a very long time to film this, and I suspect it's going to take me an even longer time to edit it. But I hope you found it very helpful. I hope it's going to help you make purchase decisions. If you like this video, then subscribe, comment, like, watch another video on my channel.